So, Johnny, last night we went to a party.
A
I don't know if I
party?
told you.
You went to
Yeah, we watched a movie.
a
At,
movie? You watched a movie?
yeah, 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys? You watched 12
Yes, Johnny, we went to a pa. We watched a mo. It was 12 ma.
Why wasn't I invited? Okay, welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny Craddock,
I'm Darren Lundberg.
and today we're going to talk about 12 Monkeys, a 1995 film directed by Terry Gilliam, starring Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt, and Madeleine Stowe. Darren, we have a returning guest. He's back for more. This is his third time with us. He joined us for Rad. He joined us for Rainmaker, and he's back again for 12 Monkeys. Brian Skutle of Sonic Cinema Podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me back.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. We appreciate it.
We were joking around how you're, well, if you want to, I guess you can explain just how you're doing, but basically you're just a still image right now, we're joking about it being this being a remake of a movie made entirely from still images. I guess it makes perfect sense. But yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm, busy as usual between work and Sonic Cinema. It's going to be award season, so just trying to catch up with as much of that as possible before I have to vote my respective critics associations.
Wow.
Sonic Cinema podcast has been going well. This year we've covered everything from Andor to movies to we covered Galaxy Quest earlier this year with Robert Yanis Jr.
Wow.
And we've also been doing a series on fascism in cinema and basically the ways that various looks at authoritarianism as well as resistance to authoritarianism.
Mhm.
And so that's been an ongoing series. And the last episode before we did this episode, we talked about various adaptations of H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds. So
Mhm.
that was a fun discussion to do as well.
What conclusions did you come to about the Amazon Prime Ice Cube starring War of the Worlds? What was
I
the
I I think it has some interesting ideas, but the execution was just appalling.
yeah.
Like just absolutely dreadful. And it's like, yeah, it was filmed during COVID, but the fact of matter is it's like, come on, you couldn't come up with a better execution than that. What are we even doing? And Ice Cube was not a good lead for that movie at all. Um, I usually am fine with him as an actor, but he just did not. He didn't add anything to that movie whatsoever.
Wow. I don't think anybody added anything to that movie. Didn't that notoriously drop? It had like a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes for like the longest time. I think it's up to like 3%.
Something it's definitely down there. I don't know what it is right now, but yeah, it's definitely down there on Rotten Tomatoes. Like I don't know anybody who genuinely enjoyed it, thought it was a good movie. It's one of those, oh, it's so bad it's good.
Hmm.
It's just bad. Yeah.
Okay.
It's so bad, it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of those. Johnny, did you have any experience with War of the Worlds? Like, what's your
Well,
history with
recently
that?
I watched the Tom Cruise one with
Okay.
my son recently, and I just got
Yeah.
bored and walked away. I was like, I
Oh,
can't keep doing
really?
this. Yeah, I had a hard time with that one. It's fine in the beginning, but after a while I get bored and I walked away.
Hmm.
Yeah. Brian and I have had conversations about Spielberg before. I don't think we've ever chatted about that one, but War of the Worlds, the Spielberg one, I struggle with that. I've watched it maybe 6, 7 times. Like this time it'll click, and it always gets to a certain point. I think it's at the point. I don't know. I know it's at a certain point. Right when Tim Robbins is introduced, it loses me. Like all of a sudden, it's like I
Huh.
drop off a cliff, and I'm like, what's happening? And so, you know how a lot of times, like especially online now, people are like, oh, go watch this again and reassess it. It's like that's one that I'm not huge on that, but that's one that I'm like, maybe I'm seeing it wrong. But no, every time I've watched it, it loses me at the exact same point. And then it just never recovers to the point where the Robbie character lives, and I'm like, come on, you know? So just yeah, War of the Worlds is a weird. I just don't think they've ever done better than the Orson Welles version. I just think that was the way, the way that you and your guest talked about that one, Brian. Who did you have on for that? You had
Phil
Carlo on for
Faso,
Braveheart. Okay.
my Phil Faso is my usual horror film
Yeah.
guy. But I mean, we've discussed other stuff. We've talked about the Italian neorealism and Vittorio De Sica,
Mhm.
and he's actually going to be a guest later on in the year when in one of my fascism and cinema episodes.
Okay,
So that's going to be a fun one to talk about with them.
Yeah, the way that you and he were like talked about how it plays so well because it starts off as a radio broadcast that's interrupted, and Orson Welles just orchestrates that whole thing so beautifully so that even if you know
Mhm.
it's still very persuasive. Anyway, that's a really good episode. Everybody should listen to that. Like Brian, and Johnny, he and I are really big on your film history and everything. And so that's definitely one of those episodes that serves you well and serves your knowledge well. So everybody should check
I
it out.
appreciate it.
Yeah, as always.
Okay, so Brian, while trying to figure out what we're going to do for this episode, we gave you a few options to pick from. And I had a movie I wanted to talk about. And I was pretty set on choosing this certain movie, and you shot it down. Do you know what that movie was?
It was
I
another
can't
Gilliam movie.
remember.
It was another
Okay.
Gilliam movie. I know that for sure.
Oh, was it Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas?
Yeah.
Uh yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that one.
But you
Maybe we
being such
can.
a good guy, you were still like, but if you want me to talk about that one, I guess we can. I'm like, I'm not gonna. That's not
Yeah.
let you do
Yeah.
that.
But no, I'm glad we agreed on 12 Monkeys because I love this movie and I'm excited to hear what you think about it. Um,
Yeah.
so let's jump in because I'm excited. I want to go over our histories first, and I'll go ahead and go first here. Now, when this movie came out, I remember like kind of being put off by the trailer. I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but when I saw the trailer, I was kind of like, I don't know what that is. I don't know if I really care what that is. Like, I don't really have an interest in seeing that. It just seemed weird from what I saw. And the title itself kind of turned me off. I was like, 12 monkeys. Like, I don't want to watch a movie about monkeys. I just didn't. I mean, I was like, I've seen Planet of the Apes. I've seen Gorillas in the Mist. I've seen, Project X and whatever, all those
King
movies. I was like,
Kong.
I don't need to sit there. Yeah, I've seen them. I don't need to watch a monkey movie. And then I had a friend tell me like a year later, he's like, you gotta see 12 Monkeys, man. And I was like, oh, really? What is it? And he was like, he just told me all about it. And I was like, oh, and I was like, I had no idea. So then I took a look at it and I was like, well, of course I'm gonna like this. It's a Terry Gilliam movie. So why wouldn't I like it, you know? But anyway, the first watch for me, I remember kind of coming out of it like disoriented and feeling like, what did I just see? I was like, what was that? And it was confusing in parts, and I really enjoyed what I was seeing. I remember having a good experience, but just also kind of feeling like, man, that was weird. And then I watched it again, and then I watched it again, and then I fell more and more in love with it. And it's one of my favorite movies. It's on my top 10 favorite movie list now.
Whoa.
I cannot get enough of this movie. I watch it probably 2 times a year at least. And I showed my kids recently, and they loved it, and it's one of my favorites. But I'm curious to know what your first experience was with it, and if you like it or don't like it.
Well,
Brian. Oh,
yeah, yeah.
Darren. Sorry,
No,
Darren.
I remember seeing this in the theater. I don't remember the trailers for. I know for a fact that it was marketed as like either a pure sci-fi or action because Bruce Willis was in it, and that's not
Hmm.
what the movie is like at all. which I think is maybe kind of smart because this is a movie like you cannot advertise a cerebral movie for audiences. I'm sorry. If you try to say this is a cerebral, intelligent, mind-bending movie, people are going to be like, I don't want to watch that. Give me Spider-Man 18. You know what I mean? Like they just want something that's simple. So in a way,
Mhm.
I think it's really smart that they would market it as a straight sci-fi or something with interesting visuals because that's kind of like you rope them in and oh, I'm watching a Bruce Willis movie. Oh, I wasn't expecting this. Oh, what does this mean? And then you start their brains going. So they walk out experiencing something and they grow up, you know what I mean, as they're watching a movie like this. So even though I would assume watching the trailer for it, you'd be like, that isn't what this movie is like at all. You know what I mean? But then you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a tough sell. You can't ever, you have to like ease people into something being cerebral. You
Mhm.
can't like have them be shocked by that. Even though the three of us as cinephiles, the three of us going to movies, we adore that kind of stuff and we would walk in. The average, it's all about making money, right? We've got to make the almighty dollar. So how do we get butts and seats for it? But again, I remember just my experience of watching the movie. I don't think I was one of those people who's like, why isn't Bruce Willis in Die Hard mode? I remember specifically, and we'll talk about him in a bit, being impressed by Brad Pitt, like really impressed by him. And then I remember the ending being really, really depressing, and then walking out going, "Well, that was depressing, but I guess that was art." You know what I mean? Like art is supposed to be depressing or something like that. But you're right, Johnny. The more that you watch this, and I think Siskel and Ebert in their review, they said that they watched it twice before they reviewed it.
Hmm.
And I think that's smart because when a movie surprises you like this, I think you need to be ready to talk about it instead of what was that? I don't think that's a good conversation. I think you want to watch something like this again to see if was that really bad or did that give me really something to chew on? So anyway, I think the more that I watch this, and again, we'll talk about it. It takes me a while to warm up to it, but by the end, it's a singular experience. So that's again, this is a movie that changes over time. Just like in the movie, I think there's a part where they watch Vertigo and
Mhm.
Cole's like, I'm different. The movie stays the same. The characters are going to do exactly what they always do, but I'm different when I watch it again. And I think that's a great kind of metaphor for the movie itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, your
No,
thoughts on it?
I agree with that. And I mean, my experience with the movie is sort of like a combination of both of yours. Like I know my mom and I we watched this theatrically, like when it came out in theaters. It was like January of '96 when it hit
Yeah.
Atlanta. And we were a bit to Johnny's point, we were a bit disoriented. Like what is like we more or less understood what we watched, but at the same time the time travel, the going back and forth with time really kind of confused us. Like it wasn't a bad movie, it just was in we were kind of unsure of what we were thinking about it. Eventually I came back to it and really liked it even more. And I mean, now, I mean, this is one of I don't know about 60 some odd movies that if you go to my letterbox, this is one of 60 some odd movies that I've given 5 stars to.
Mhm.
I'm very stingy with 5 stars on
Yes, you are. Yeah.
letterbox, and this is one of them. And I mean, when you guys asked for top 10 movies of the 90s for the
Right.
last part of your previous 90s series, this was in my top 10
That's right.
because I think it's that good. And it, it didn't start that way, but it's one where I really have come to respect and love it in a lot of ways. And I think one of the things that is extraordinary about this movie is the fact that it, you mentioned time travel, so it's definitely got science fiction. It's definitely got horror. It's post-apocalyptic,
Mm.
and there's a little bit of action, but there's also a lot of dark comedy. Like there are scenes in this movie that you would not be surprised if Gilliam came out and said, "Oh yeah, this was clearly inspired by like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something like that." When they're in the mental institution near the beginning. I mean, he's definitely one of the things I love about this movie with Gilliam is that he is in such control of the tone of this movie that it's really absolutely striking just how well he puts it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue to the next topic because Terry Gilliam, we want to talk about him for sure. One thing Darren and I were mentioning before we started recording was you can always tell a Terry Gilliam movie. Like, he
Yeah.
just has like an aesthetic. He has a look, and all of them, all of his movies kind of look dirty, according to Darren.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was, I remember like watching a documentary or something about when Tarantino was workshopping Reservoir Dogs at Sundance. Terry Gilliam happened to be there, and he kind of took him aside and asked him. He said, "All your movies have a very similar look and a very similar feel and very cohesive. How do you do that? Like, how do you make it look like your vision on the screen?" And he was like, "Well, look, any director can be a visionary, have a vision, but if you don't hire the right people in the right roles, then you're not going to get that, cohesive look at the end. You're not going to get that finished product. So the most talented, the best cinematographer, the best, costume designer, the best art director, get these people, in those positions to help see your vision through. And that's how you do it." And he was like, "Oh." So
Mhm.
you don't need to be good at everything. Just be good at spotting talent, I guess.
So do you think Tarantino took that to heart? Do you think that helped Tarantino with his filmmaking
I think
process?
it did.
What about you,
Yeah.
Brian?
I would say so too, because I mean, especially those early years, and I mean, even over the years, even as he's changed collaborators at times, I mean, he's still more or less kept a lot of the, like, he really is not deviated from the same handful of collaborators.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Sally Menke as editor up until her passing, and then he's basically had the same editor since, I think. Was same cinematographer, but then he started working with Richardson and all of that. He's worked with Morricone a couple of times, or at least uses music a few times, sometimes to his chagrin. But no, I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. But I mean, one of the things that's also really interesting about Gilliam's aesthetic is that, yes, yes, a lot of his movies have a very similar dark fantasy type aesthetic. And I think some of that does come from the types of films that he's made. But also, and you guys talked about one of their films in your 70s series, I believe, but he was also a member of Monty Python
Hmm.
and like Life of Brian and Holy Grail, which is the one you guys touched on. Like, those were movies made on the cheap. And so, and he's somebody who's had to scrounge around and fight for budgets over the years. I mean, obviously, the most famous example is Man Who Killed Don Quixote.
Hmm.
And I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like he's somebody who, I think he's found an aesthetic that works regardless of if he has to fight for his budget or not. And, I know one of the things that's really kind of impressive about this one is that he was able to get made under major studio Universal, who he famously clashed heads with on Brazil, but also the fact that he was able to get Final Cut. Now, granted, it came with stipulations like it couldn't cost more than so and so amount of money and it couldn't run longer than so and so running time, but he made it work.
Hmm. Johnny, you bring up a really good point that I hadn't really thought about because it's Tarantino. You can tell it's a Tarantino movie, maybe from the way that it sounds mostly, but he has a lot of repeated imagery, right? And oh, that's a Tarantino shot, things like that.
Yeah. Like the
It's
trunk
funny.
shot.
Yeah, the trunk shot, especially. You look at Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which was Terry Bedford doing the cinematography, and then you look at 12 Monkeys, which is Roger Pratt doing the cinematography, and there are very similar shots. They
Yeah.
look exactly the same. You've got like the floating head, like the fish lens, fisheye lens, things like that. It does have a cheap look. I think Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which we talked about, it seems very cheap, but it also seems very appropriate for the time. Seems very dirty, seems very unpolished. And so I think everything about Holy Grail, even though it's the very low budget, I think it works perfectly for the story being told and the humor being told. I think it's all just masterpiece level, even though you don't think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail that way. I just think it's interesting. There are images in 12 Monkeys too, where like all of a sudden there'll be an image from it's like, oh, did I switch to Brazil? All of a sudden I'm watching Brazil, like especially when the scientists their heads pop up and they start singing in camera. I'm like, oh, this just turned to Brazil, which is also
Yeah.
Roger Pratt. So, but I think that's what you want. I think it's very recognizable. I just think it's and we'll talk about it. I think the story that's being told here is a little more, um, ambiguous. It's a little more adult. It's a little more mature. But as always, it's really interesting.
You mentioned Roger Pratt, and I think the reason why Gilliam with a lot of his movies look very similar is because you get the same people. I mean, we talked about that a little bit. You find someone you like, someone who like can see, realize your vision, and you want to work with that person again. And so with Roger Pratt and Gilliam working together on several different projects, like Brazil and Fisher King, I think he worked on it with.
Mhm.
You get a similar look, a similar style, and so when you find that what works, you want to stay with it. So that's why you see that quite often, where directors pick the same, cinematographer or the same editor or whatever. They find someone who works with them and works well with them, and they, keep it going, which is good.
Yeah.
Um, but what I want to say about Terry Gilliam is I'm never bored looking around the screen on his movies. There's always something to look
Mhm.
at. I'm like, just like my eyes cannot sit still. I'm like, whoa, look at that. Whoa, look at that. Everywhere you look, there's something to, entertain you. There are lulls in his movies, but even then, you're like, well, I can look over here and be entertained for a while.
Yeah.
So even though it's boring, I'll look over here and see what's going on over there. So what do you think about that?
Brian?
No, I think there's truth to that. And I mean, even this one has some lulls to a certain extent. Like the when he goes back and forth in time and he goes back to present day and stuff like that, it almost feels like he finds himself in the same place over and over and over. And like it's not until he's reoriented into his present day that you start to see differences in the dynamic between he and the scientist. But it's always interesting. It's always interesting. It's always moving the plot forward. And one of the things I wanted to say is one of the things that's so impressive about Gilliam is that and this goes all the way back to Monty Python as well, where it's like even as silly as Holy Grail and Life of Brian are, and a lot of Gilliam's movies are, they all have scope. Like you always feel like you're seeing a bigger world be built on screen.
Mm.
Like, yes, it's inherently silly to see the Knights of the Round Table using coconuts instead of horses, but you feel like you're taking on this grand epic adventure befitting the Knights of the Round Table, even though it's probably the same sets they use multiple times over.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the case in here too. And you know, few filmmakers have done more with less in terms of resources than Gilliam has. And it's one of those things that's just extraordinarily impressive with him as a filmmaker.
Yeah. It's interesting, Brian, you mentioned that he this is a job for hire, which again I thought was very interesting because I don't think of this as a job for hire. It always surprises me to remember that. Obviously, it's David and Janet Webb Peoples who wrote the screenplay for this. Oh, I don't know if Janet, her middle name is Webb. I know David's middle name is Webb. But anyway, David's very famous for writing Blade Runner, very famous for writing Unforgiven, which was one of my favorite screenplays. And so he's a writer that I definitely look up to. But it's interesting to think of Gilliam notoriously, he had his fights with Brazil, right? He ended up
Hmm.
making there's a couple like a Jabberwocky, which Johnny'd seen. I haven't seen that one yet. That's on my list. But and then you also have Time Bandits or Adventures of Baron Munchausen was the one. I think it was budgeted like 23 million and ended up costing 46 million dollars or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing that Charles Roven, the producer, like he thought of Gilliam, but that the Universal was also like, oh yeah, let's get this guy in here that doubled the budget of his last movie. Like, yeah, that'll be a good idea. But I think Roven pulled some strings, and Gilliam, I think he wanted to prove himself. This was after Fisher King, and so Fisher King was another job for hire, but it's another movie that's got a Richard LaGravenese screenplay, and it's very on the surface, on paper, it's very normal. It's a good story, but Gilliam is able to take it and make it his by having fantasy sequences with the Robin Williams character, right? So again, very personal as a film, and then to do this, so that was under budget and under schedule, and so that proved it. And then he wanted to prove himself again with this, you know what I mean? And so that's again what happened. I just think it's interesting that even though he was a job for hire, this is very much a Terry Gilliam movie, right? I just think, and again, the visuals, it does seem very dirty. It does seem very unclean. A lot of the shots seem very unfinished. But again, like you said, John, that's a Terry Gilliam movie, right? It's exactly what you
Hmm.
expect from it. But also, I think that as the story, because the story is purposely confusing, and the people say this too, is they wanted you to feel maybe as crazy as the James Cole character. And so when you're gradually starting to pick up on all these things and realize, but we see him from the beginning, we see him, so we side with him automatically. But just the way that the images are kind of crazy, and even though they continue being crazy, the story takes on more resonance and more seriousness. And I think that's a real feat. I also think that it's with all the crazy stuff going on, once you sit down and you explain the plot and you actually explain the plot out loud with your words, you're like, oh, that's actually really cool. But a
Yeah.
lot of the time the visuals confuse that. And so you're kind of taken off kilter. But yeah, I just think that it's a fascinating I just love that he made it such a personal film, which we've seen so many movies that don't seem personal and they just like Teflon.
Hmm.
Like they don't stick. And even though somebody else wrote the screenplay, Gilliam made it his. I think that's a great feat.
Yeah. The other thing that kind of like stands out when you know it's a Terry Gilliam movie is, the Dutch angles and the extreme close-ups or the wide angle lenses and like and I think that's why I felt so disoriented when I first saw it because I was like it was just kind of like dizzying, you know what I mean? Because there's
Mhm.
so much of that in this movie,
But
but
that's the
it's
purpose
it's
of
an
it,
all
isn't
yeah,
it?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's also in all of his movies,
Yeah.
so that's how you know it's his. Just for fun, I kind of wanted to go around and see. Do you have like a top three Terry Gilliam movies list? Um, I'm gonna go with Darren first.
I do. It's hard for me. Maybe I'd have to make it a top four, but I think Brazil is his masterpiece. I think Brazil, the DNA of that, Monty Python feeds into that, but then everything Gilliam has made after Brazil fits into this. 12 Monkeys it's really like could take place in the same world as Brazil. I think it kind of has the same
Hmm.
sensibility. And so Brazil is the masterpiece. So I don't know, maybe it's a tie between this one and Fisher King. I just think Fisher King, like I said, it's a somebody else's script, but the way that he's able to make it his own, I think Fisher King it might be his most normal looking movie because there are shots where it's like, oh, that's normal, and the whole, unlike 12 Monkeys, which the whole thing is just crazy. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Fisher King is at least more. So let's just say this: I love Fisher King, but let's push it down because I think my favorites are Brazil and then 12 Monkeys. Again, watching it this time, and I'll put as third because he didn't direct it. It's not fully his, but Monty Python: The Holy Grail I have to have. He directed that with Terry Jones, obviously, but that's an all-time favorite. We talked about it again, like you both mentioned in our podcast. That's my favorite funny movie. I giggle so much, so I have to put those. So again, Brazil, 12 Monkeys, and Monty Python: The Holy Grail.
All right, Brian, do you have a top three?
Yeah, and it's funny because of the fact that like I've watched Brazil a few times now, and I feel like that's a movie that I admire more than love. Like I respect the
Yeah, I can hear that.
I respect the vision of it. I respect what he did with the film, but I can't quite get to that point where I love it the same way I like love some of his other films.
Hmm.
I would say I will leave Holy Grail off of there because I mean it would if you do include it, it's definitely in my top three because I like you, Darren. I just absolutely love that film so much.
Mhm.
12 Monkeys, I think, would be my top choice. The more I've watched over the years, the more I come to respect it even more and just find myself immersed in it even more. I would say Fisher King is probably next.
Okay.
I definitely want to rewatch it, but I love the performances in
Mhm.
that. Like he gets it's like the work that he gets out of Robin Williams, Jeff Bridges, Mercedes Rule won the Oscar for her performance, and then Amanda Plummer, like
Yeah.
he understood how to bring that screenplay to life in a way that can be very funny, but also very grounded in emotions.
Mhm.
And then for my third, I love Time Bandits, but I'm gonna actually go with a movie that was one of his kind of troubled productions because of what happened in the middle of it. And I'm gonna go. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I really need to rewatch it. Gonna go with 2009's The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus,
Mhm.
Okay.
which the production of that obviously was halted and thrown in turmoil with the death of Heath Ledger. Like
Right.
everybody, and the thing is, it's like everybody associates Heath Ledger's death with Dark Knight, but Parnassus is the one they was making
Yeah.
when he passed away. And so, to fill in the blanks and to bring the film to a close, he figured out this way to bring in three separate people to essentially be
Right.
different incarnations of Ledger's character: Colin Farrell, Jude Law, and Johnny Depp. And that premise just works so well. It feels like that's how it should have been all along. Like you don't even think about the fact that it's like, oh, he did this because that is the best way you could figure out how to finish a story. Um, and then I mean, it's like he didn't direct it, but I mean, it's an unmistakable part of his filmography is Lost in La Mancha. Which the directors of that also directed a fantastic documentary on the making of 12 Monkeys as well.
The Hamster Factory.
And
Yeah.
that one is just so wild to watch and just see how his initial attempt at that movie just collapsed upon itself. And when he did finally finish it years later, it's interesting. It's interesting, but it's like you could tell that some of the things they was going to do that were really special kind of got lost in the struggle to get made
I got
in a
lost in La
way.
Mancha.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like what
But
you're saying. Real quick, I was gonna say this. I like the fact that he's unwilling to let things stay unfinished. He wants to finish his projects. Like the fact that Heath Ledger died, he still made the movie. He found a way to get the movie made, And
yeah,
then with the Don Quixote one, it took a decade, I think, right, to finally get that thing finished. But he didn't quit. And I really
yeah.
respect that.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to
No,
give my three real quick. Obviously, my first one's 12 Monkeys.
yeah.
Second one's going to be Fear and Loathing. And then
Much
the
to the
third,
chagrin of Brian.
yeah, yeah. The third is a Holy Grail.
Yeah.
But sorry, what were you going to say, Brian? I cut you off.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, Fear and Loathing, it's like that movie just kind of bounced off me the first time we saw it in theaters in 98, and I've watched it a couple of times since, and it's one of those movies that I like more now, but I still can't say that I actually like the movie.
It's
I
a hard movie to
understand
like.
more of what it's going
Yeah.
for and what's trying to do, but it's just not for me.
I get it. And the thing is, I think for me, I was is the right place, right time. I was in the right mood, and it's just always been a
Worked for
memorable
me.
experience for me. So that's why it's on my top three.
Well, Johnny and I
Yeah.
being in, we were in a production of Madeleine Mancha in high school, and so that would be one that we would have looked forward to, really, if Gilliam had full control over that, because I think that's another perfect way for him to be tell a story, but in a very Gilliam way, right?
It's
Because
in his
Quixote,
wheelhouse for sure. That's
yeah,
definitely something that he would.
because
Yeah.
Quixote goes into flights of fantasy and stuff like that, so it's
Yeah.
definitely something that would work. So it's just a shame that the movie we don't really get the full vision of it.
Hmm.
All right, so let's jump into the acting because that's always fun. Bruce Willis, and I'm gonna go first on this one because when I first saw this movie, I thought he was probably the worst actor in the movie. Now, that was my first impression. There were a couple of moments that really stood out to me, and it took me a few more viewings to finally appreciate what he was doing in the performance. But when you first see him in 1990, I think it is, and he thinks it's 96, and he's like, and the doctor comes to see him, and he's kind of rocking back and forth, and he's kind of like,
Drooling, yeah,
yeah, drooling all over
drooling.
Hmm.
himself. That to me looked fake, and I don't know why it looked fake, but I could not get over the fact that I just didn't believe him in that moment. I was like, I don't believe him at all. Like I feel like he's acting. I feel like it was Bruce Willis trying to play a crazy person and trying to, and I was like, okay, I'm not seeing him try to do that. Usually he's the action star, but like he was trying too hard in my opinion when I first saw it. And then there's another scene towards the end where he's like he escapes from the party and they're chasing him and he's like jumping around in the river or the pond, whatever. And he's like saying, I love the birds and the fishes or whatever. That moment also seemed fake to me. Like I was like, okay, I got over the fakeness of the first time I saw him in that first scene. And then like it kept going along and I started to go along with it. And then that scene at the end came up and I was like, oh, he's back to being fake again. So those are two things that kind of stood out to me. And it, like I say, it took two or three viewings to finally go, oh, I finally get it. Like I get where he was, where he just was, and where he's at now, and then like when you kind of start piecing it together as you're watching it multiple times, it makes more sense. So I appreciate his performance years later, but I still think out of the three performances in the movie, I think his is my least favorite.
Okay.
Darren?
You know, I don't think Gilliam wanted like a star for this, but I think you needed to have a star in the movie to be able to sell it, right? And
Yeah.
Bruce Willis, he's Die Hard is obviously very, very famous for not just for the way that the visual language of the movie is, but also the way that it was written, the way because of John McClane was not the Schwarzenegger, Stallone type hero where he's always quipping. And what really got people to latch onto John McClane is he was just like us, right? He's stuck in a
Hmm.
situation. He's sarcastic. He's talking to himself because that's what you're going to do. He's mad at himself. He's cheering himself on. It was just in the 80s with all these action movies that are just dumb. There's no way around. Like Commando is fun, but it's dumb. You know what I mean? Like Cobra is a
Yeah.
lot of fun, but it's dumb. Like there's no way around that. And Die Hard was so smart, not just in McTiernan's filmmaking, but also, like we said, in the writing and the performances. And so that created a persona. Like Bruce Willis was obviously trying to find his jump from TV to the big screen. Moonlighting, he was huge. Sunset didn't work out. The Blind Date didn't work out. And so I think Die Hard was like his Hail Mary. But sometimes an actor finds a role that's just him. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's who he's going to be known for the rest of his life. I think John McClane is one of these iconic performances, not just because of Willis's performance, which is great, but also, like I said, the writing and the direction of him, the way that McTiernan and DeBont in the frame of Die Hard, they always make McClane so small within the frame, like he's being overwhelmed, which visually tells you where his mindset is, right? It's not just that, like I said, the performance and the writing, it's the filmmaking, and all that works. But again, without Willis to really pull that off, I don't think it would have worked as well. And so when you're going to hire him for this, what I loved about Willis is he had this persona, but then like with Pulp Fiction, and I think Nobody's Fool with Paul Newman and Melanie Griffith, he took like an
Hmm.
uncredited role. That was a small role, and it was fun seeing him in that. Billy Bathgate, I think he had a very small cameo where he gets like cement shoes and thrown into the water. It's a gangster movie. So he was a very big star. I think very Gilliam, he had, because it was such a small budget, they made sure that Brad Pitt and Madeleine Stowe and Bruce Willis didn't take their full usual their pay, and so they knocked that down. And so one of the rules for Gilliam was like, I don't want Bruce Willis's entourage on set with him. He's got to be away from his Hollywood persona because I want to have him. I think Gilliam says that the scene in Die Hard where he's pulling the ice, not the ice, the glass out of his feet.
Mhm.
And I was surprised to learn that when he's talking about, like, I want to apologize to my wife, and he's like telling Al, he's like, just tell her that she's the best thing that happened to a bum like me. And he's emotional. Again, that's not something you see in a Schwarzenegger or Stallone movie. And I was surprised to learn that Willis actually he requested that for the movie himself. It wasn't written. Like, he wanted that in there. And so Gilliam, seeing that vulnerability, was like, yeah, that's what I want. And so this is just a long-winded way of saying I love that Bruce Willis is taking chances here. Even when he's fighting, and that's another thing I wanted to say. It seems like every scene in this takes place like with homeless people or with rundown hotels. Like, everything seems so
Yeah.
dirty and gross.
Yeah.
But there's also a nice visual dichotomy with the way that, Cole talks in the institution. He's talking with the 5 psychiatrists, the 5 doctors. But then in the future, he's also talking with the 5 scientists. Like, it's nicely juxtaposed. Like, what's crazier, like this sanatorium or this, like, the future where he's being used as a guinea pig, right? Really brilliant filmmaking there. But the way that when he's fighting some homeless people, he's not John McClane. It's like a struggle for him. And he kills one guy, but he's like wheezing and he's breathing hard. Again, a long way of saying I love the vulnerability of Willis's performance here. I love that there's a switch when he finally goes back for the last time. And it's interesting screenplay wise how he's like, no, I'm crazy. Arrest me. I'm crazy. And it's the Stowe character who has to convince him, no, you're not. I've got all this evidence. It's a nice juxtaposing of things. But anyway, That's a long-winded way of saying, like, for the third time, he's saying that it's a very good, vulnerable Bruce Willis performance that once you realize what's going on and that he's basically a tool in the hands of Gilliam, I think it's a great performance.
Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I am, and I'm glad that we're talking about this movie because of the fact that it gives us a chance to talk about Bruce Willis, who his personal life, he's not in great shape because of the dementia that he's having to deal with. So, I haven't had too many times to really talk about him since that happened. And he is, I feel like, you kind of brought up, Darin, where it's like up until this point, he's almost entirely in that moonlighting, diehard type role. I mean, obviously he'd taken persona, like he'd obviously taken risks before because he had been in Death Becomes Her, he had been in Bonfire. I think he had been in Bonfire of the Vanities too, right?
That was 1990.
So I mean, he'd been taking chances with certain filmmakers like Zemeckis, like De Palma. This is the first one that really seems like it's him going out of his way to challenge himself in a lot of ways. And it's funny, you were talking about the trailers for the movie before, early on, and you talking about how this movie is completely not sold in the same way that it plays out remind me of another Bruce Willis movie that we would see later in this decade, which is The Sixth Sense, which if you've ever seen those trailers, yes, you have the I see dead people and stuff like that, but they also treat it in a very thriller type manner where it's a little bit more conventional, the movie that we ended up getting. I definitely understand what Jonny is saying as far as the performance being very rough, especially when he's in the mental institution. It's like you really, it's hard to kind of see him in that type of performance because I think part of it is because up until this point, even in something like Pulp Fiction or Four Rooms, we wouldn't have necessarily seen him in that type of role.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things I've come to appreciate the more I've seen this is that, to Darren's point, the vulnerability in the character, and even and he's and the fact that his psychological vulnerability, like he knows what he believes early on in the film, but it's funny because the more and more he's thrown bit in and out of the present day and into the past, he starts to lose track of, well, maybe I am crazy. And he plays it off so well, and it really does come to a head in that movie theater scene where they're watching Vertigo near the end.
Mhm.
And it's just really quite striking, the the complete vulnerability. I would say this is one of Willis's best performances. It really is. It's definitely up there. I don't know if it's his best, but it's definitely up there.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I say, the more you watch it, the better it gets. It was just my initial viewing of it that I was like, what was that? 'Cause, like you saw
Yeah.
a little something, and I was like, I'm not quite sure I believe that exactly. But like I say,
Well, just
after you watch it, it gets
yeah.
better.
Just to say a little bit, I understand what you're saying by it being rough, but I also think the filmmaking is a little bit rough at the beginning too. So
Mhm.
I think fits in perfectly. You're right. Like Johnny, he may look like he's acting, but still the roughness of the filmmaking, I think it helps it that it doesn't stand out as much. Like a Keanu Reeves trying to do a British accent in Bram Stoker's. It's not that strong because it fits the rest of what's going on, so it doesn't stand out. You just notice it, but.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
watching it again, you're like, well, the filmmaking is not quite there yet either, and so I think again, narratively, you're looking at this as the movie is trying to figure itself out as Cole is trying to figure itself out, right? As the Madeleine Stowe character, I keep forgetting her name. What is her name?
Doctor something.
Rayleigh, Dr. Rayleigh, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to
Yeah.
figure it out, and so I think it all fits. We don't usually think of movies in terms like this. Like I said about Holy Grail, I think the dirtiness of it feels very period authentic, you know what I mean, to the time, even though they're walking with
Hmm.
coconuts. And there's a satirical kind of absurdist quality to Holy Grail that it just everything works so perfectly together to the point where Holy Grail ends with like you can look at the movie as these people are cosplaying as these characters, and then the cops come and arrest them because they've murdered somebody, right? It's gotten out of hand. So this whole absurdist thing, I think it works in here too. I just think it's really funny that Gilliam's absurdist, but he's also ambiguous. Like how do those work together? But I think Gilliam just works perfectly. And again, Brian, you said about Fisher King with those four performances from Williams and Bridges and Plummer and Rule. It's like he knows how to use them. And it's the same thing here.
Yeah.
Gilliam knows how to use. It's fascinating watching that Hamster Factor documentary and seeing Willis and Gilliam talk to each other. There's a point where it's the Rayleigh character's in the trunk and she's trying to get out, and Gilliam's like, "I think she's just going to kick you, and you're going to fall so far back that she's going to be able to run away." And Bruce Willis is like, "I don't agree. I don't think that's going to work." And so you can see them, and I'm surprised by that, but it's Bruce Willis. Like he knows what, I guess he's playing with his image, but it's still, they work together. And Gilliam working with Willis to do this, I think that's what makes this such a good Willis performance because he's being pushed by the part and by the
Hmm.
director.
Yeah. All right. Well, Darren, do you have a top three Bruce Willis?
I do. I'm just going to put Die Hard as number one. Die Hard is maybe after Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite action movie ever made, and it would have been good just for the story, but like I said, the cinematography visually crowds McClane and makes him feel like the underdog. And again, that's the role that defined Bruce Willis. And when he breaks away from that role, like in this or Pulp Fiction or Death Becomes Her, which is another, I don't really like that movie, but I think his performance is really funny and it's not the regular Bruce Willis, right? When you see him break away and you see him do a good job, unlike Michael Jordan trying to play baseball, you know what I mean? I think it's nice watching Bruce Willis really nail these other roles. And so I would, 12 Monkeys is up there, but I can't get over Pulp Fiction, right? Pulp Fiction is like he's still Bruce Willis in that, but it's such a fun kind of, redemptive kind of story. And that was the first time I remember seeing Bruce Willis, even though he'd been in Bonfire of the Vanities and some other stuff. That was the first time I was like, oh, he can actually do some really good actorly stuff, not just being the action star, right? And then I was going to put Sixth Sense on here because that's Willis has said that he's known for Die Hard, for Pulp Fiction, and Sixth Sense, and he's always said that if an actor can be known for three roles, three major movies, then he's done his job, and Bruce Willis has done his job. But The Sixth Sense is a movie that I like other Shyamalan movies better, even though, and Johnny and I talked about this before recorded. The Sixth Sense is an interesting performance, Brian, because like Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption, Tim Robbins is trying to be a cipher in that movie, trying to be enigmatic so that you can't really understand, did he kill his wife? Did he not? Like, what's going on in his brain? Is he going to kill himself? Is he not? And he has to play that role as very enigmatic, like I said, and it can come off as dull. Like you can watch Robbins's performance in Shawshank and go, this is a dull performance. Like there's nothing to this. He's like just reading his lines phonetically, but it's all to a point. I think it's the same thing with Bruce Willis in Sixth Sense. He has to play quiet and cool and calm. Otherwise, the Cole character will be breathing, we'll see his breath in the air, and that'll give away the game to what Bruce Willis's character is doing. So even though I like his performance in that, just recently, I've always been a fan of the movie Red from 2010, I believe. And that's a movie star movie. Like Bruce Willis, I know that because he had his issues with his brain, and there's always a point where you're like, where did he start falling off? And I think Red was his last really great performance because you've got Ernest Borgnine and John Malkovich, and you've got Mary Louise Parker, you've got Morgan Freeman, you've got Richard Dreyfuss, you've got Carl Urban, you've got all these actors, and you've got Helen Mirren for crying out loud. Bruce Willis cannot be lazy in a movie like that because he's surrounded by these other people. And he plays so well with everybody in that movie. It's so fun. And it's one of those movies that there was a month where I would watch it every week, like once every week. So I was like, I love this movie and just the tone that it plays with. But yeah, even though it's not his best performance, I love watching that movie and seeing him play a movie star in that one. So those are my top three. You got Die Hard, Pulp Fiction, and then you've got Red, and then 12 Monkeys, I think, would be the follow-up.
Okay. Brian, your top three?
I'm so glad you mentioned Red because I agree with you completely. I love that movie so much, and it is just such a fun movie.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, yeah, with like you, I mean, it's impossible to go with anything other than Die Hard as number one. Not just as a film, but as a performance. Like, it is probably one of the most well-rounded performances he's ever given. I think 12 Monkeys would definitely. So I would say I do think 12 Monkeys would be definitely in my top three, but and as well as Pulp Fiction. Like those would be the obvious ones because they're all three like probably the best movies he's ever been in. But I do want to put Sixth Sense in my top three.
Good.
Because he could have very easily just phoned that performance in because I mean he very famously was forced to do Sixth Sense because a previous deal with Disney fell through and he was forced to do a couple movies. That was one. The Kid is the other one.
Oh, okay.
He could have easily just looked at this movie and gone, what is this movie? But I think his work in that movie, he does. There are some of his scenes with Haley Joel Osment, that movie, his final scene with Olivia Williams in that movie is just absolutely heartbreaking. I absolutely love it.
It's vulnerable. Yeah.
I would push back on you as far as like 2010 sort of being like after 2010 kind of. I mean, it was definitely, you could definitely say after that is when he started to kind of fall off in terms of his mental capabilities. But I would definitely say at least after 2012 because that year has a couple of my favorite performances of his, which is Wes Anderson's Moonrise
Oh
Kingdom
yes, yeah, he's on.
and
He's on for that
Ryan
one. Yeah.
Johnson's Looper.
Oh, okay.
He
Yeah,
was terrific in Looper.
yeah. I take it back.
Um,
Those two are great. Yeah,
but also Unbreakable is
yeah.
I think his work in Unbreakable is some of his best work. I mean, it really is, and
And
he's got
another
to go up
modulated
against
performance. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and he another one for Shyamalan, and he had to go up against Jackson, which they didn't share any scenes together in Pulp Fiction. They almost were in that bar scene together with
Mhm.
Marcellus Wallace, but they didn't actually share dialogue.
Yeah, Travolta gets
But
that. Yeah.
he is fantastic in that movie. And but yeah, there's so many performances of his that I just really love. And yeah, it's hard to whittle down to just three.
He's such a movie star. It's such a loss
Yeah.
seeing his brain and his mental state go, because it's like we're so in need of movie stars right now. And Bruce Willis was a movie star. You know what I mean? You went to see a Bruce Willis movie, so yeah, it's a great
hmm
story.
Well, even though I kind of started critical on a 12 Monkeys performance, I'm going to say that's my favorite performance of his is 12 Monkeys because, like I say, over the years, I like it more and more. Um, Next is probably Pulp Fiction. However, same kind of thing happened in Pulp Fiction. There are moments when I think I can see through his performance. I probably won't go into him too much, but the one scene where he's freaking out trying to find the watch in the motel room and he's throwing apart the suitcase and he can't find it. There's a moment where you go, what happened? Bruce showed up. It's no longer the character. Now I just saw Bruce, And if you look closely, you can see it. But anyway, still great performance. I'm not going to put Die Hard on there, even though I think he's great. Darren, you mentioned Blind Date, and I grew up watching Blind Date. My family
Wow,
watched that
awesome,
all the
awesome.
time, and he has some really funny moments in that movie. When he gets drunk and goes to that party, it is hilarious and it's so funny. And so his comic timing in that movie it's worth a watch if you haven't seen Blind Date. His
Awesome.
performance is really really good.
Yeah.
And if you
Anyway,
haven't
okay.
seen Moonlighting, and if you haven't
Oh
seen
yeah.
Moonlighting in a while, check out Moonlighting. I think it's on Hulu. He was just so on point. Like he was a star from the get-go on on that show.
Yeah.
All right, so Brad Pitt is next, and I can't wait for this because this, I think, is for me what makes the movie. When he's on screen, I just get like this ball of energy inside me, and I just get so excited. Like I love watching this performance. I kind of relate it to when I first started making movies. When you're on a movie set and you're actually seeing the process play out and you're watching everybody do the things and it's all coming together, there's an excitement and you feel it in your gut and you get like chilled in your spine. And it's like when you're feeling that, the rest of the crew's feeling it. And it kind of like just goes throughout the whole set. And when I get that feeling watching his performance in 12 Monkeys, I'm reminded of how it feels to be on a set making a movie. And so it's like, oh, I just love that feeling. And so that's why I gravitate towards Brad Pitt's performance in this because it's so raw and it's so good and it's so funny. Like he's so good. I remember watching like some documentary or something where Gilliam said that I don't know if he spent 2 weeks or 2 months in a insane asylum, but when Brad Pitt came out of his research mode of like spending time with these people and he called action for the first time and he pops his head out of that shirt and out of that chair like he just exploded on the screen. And I love that imagery of seeing Brad Pitt like rehearsing researching his character with mental patients like trying to find out who this guy is. And when you know that, man, he just brings it to life. And like I say, it's so real, it's so fun, and I just laugh my head off and have a great time each time I watch it. But Darren, what's your thoughts on Brad Pitt's performance?
This was, like you mentioned at the start, Brad Pitt started out as a pretty boy, right? I mean, he was in Thelma and Louise. Everybody loves his body in that one. He was in Legend of the Fall, very, very famously. And he was, before Interview with the Vampire and Legends of the Fall had been released, he'd been cast in this. And so they got him before they had to pay a ginormous paycheck for
Yeah,
him, right?
I was actually gonna say because I could not remember the timeline of when he got cast in this whether it was before. It felt like it was definitely before the 1-2 punch of Interview with the Vampire and Legends of the Fall came out.
Mhm.
But it's ironic because it's also the last one in that run where Seven is included as well.
Yeah. And it's awesome you bring up Seven because, like I said, he was a pretty boy, and I was like, "Who is this guy? I don't like this guy." You know what I mean? And then he did. Seven came out first, and
Mm-hmm.
he's got a scene, and he plays the hothead. Obviously, the scene I'm going to spoil Seven for you. For some reason, you're an idiot and you haven't seen Seven yet. But when it turns out that John Doe has killed Tracy, and Morgan Freeman, Somerset is looking at Mills, going, "If you kill him, he will win."
Hmm.
And Brad Pitt does something where he goes, oh God," like he knows what's going on. He like, I,
Mm-hmm.
I can't, like, you can see the struggle play out. And I remember sitting in the theater going, "Holy crap, Pretty Boy can act." You know what I mean? Like that is fantastic. Like I can feel him. And then you see him the 1-2 punch of 12 Monkeys where he's just so he purposely put in a fake eye. He cut his own hair. He's manic. He's moving all around. I think it's funny that he has an anti-consumerism monologue that he goes off on yo-yos, electronically operated sexual devices, stereo system with brain implanted headphones. And like he goes, "We're consumers, Jim. Yeah, like if you don't buy a lot of stuff, what are you? You're mentally ill." I thought that was really funny considering. And then he leads a movement, right?
Yeah.
Instead of destroying buildings, or whatever, he sets the animals. I thought it was a very funny kind of Fight Club-ish kind of look
Yeah.
into the future. Speaking of a future movie, but just the way that he was willing to go unpretty just for performance, and that monologue that he did, I think that was the first thing that he did on set, and people were like, "Whoa!" Like I wasn't expecting that, and that sets the tone. I think it's funny that the Cole character is comatose for all the times that the Jeffrey Goins characters, because it lets Bruce Willis just sit there while
Yeah.
Brad Pitt go. There's no competing, and it lets Brad Pitt take over. So again,
Yeah.
I think it's a great performance. It's a funny performance, even when he's normal and he's got the long hair and he's falling asleep at his dad's like his dinner or whatever. It's really funny. And then I love how, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the time traveling stuff. I love how he can, like we talked about with modulated performances, his performance can come off as very scary. But the fact that it turns out that all they did is they released animals and they put his dad in the cage or whatever, I think
Mm-hmm.
it goes, oh, it wasn't dangerous. He was just literally crazy. And like they were
Right.
just trying to be like these college students trying to
Yeah.
make a statement instead of destroying. I just thought it was really funny. But again, very good performance. That 1-2 punch of this and Seven was like, oh, this is a great actor. To the point where he did Troy and he was a pretty boy again. I was like, oh, I don't want to watch this. You're an interesting actor. Again, art versus artist. We're not talking about how he is in his personal life, but you're looking at a movie star in a movie star in the making in these movies, and he gives better performance in this than he gives in either Interview with a Vampire or Legends of the Fall, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brian, your thoughts.
It's funny because of the fact that it's like I think to a certain extent, at least the first time I saw this, I kind of felt the same way about Pitt's performance, the way Johnny did Willis's performance, where it's like I wasn't really completely on board with Pitt as an actor's actor yet. Like I
Mhm.
Okay.
really enjoyed him in Interview with the Vampire. I mean, Legends of the Fall basically coats on his beauty and stuff like that.
Long hair.
Seven, you could see, yeah, there's some really good stuff in Seven, but 12 Monkeys, I just wasn't quite, even though you got the Oscar nomination for 12 Monkeys, I wasn't completely convinced that it's like, oh, this guy's like a legitimately great actor. Like I wasn't quite there yet with him. Over the years, I do love his performance, and it again, it goes with the tone that Gilliam is doing, the perfect modulation. And you brought up the fact that, every time we see Goins in the insane mental institution, Cole is basically comatose. And then what do we see when he is basically coming off as an upstanding young gentleman at his father's party, later as his father's house? Cole is more unbalanced, and he's more unglued, untethered to reality than he is there. I think it was probably I eventually got there with these two performances, 12 Monkeys and Seven. But I think Fight Club is kind of where I really started to go, oh, okay. Yeah, I see where Pitt is, okay, I see where the talent is coming from when it comes to Pitt. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, have you seen any of the recent movies he's done? Because I've kind of lost interest. But I did see Bullet Train, and that kind of sparked me again. Oh, okay, yeah, there's the Brad Pitt that I like.
Hmm.
I have not seen Bullet Train yet. I mean, it's like with him, I will say I do think to a certain extent because of how much I love certain movies of his, I would say that yeah, he is kind of one of my favorite actors, but I completely understand like if you watch some of his roles and it's like, yeah, it just isn't really for me. I am curious to see what this Cliff Booth spinoff that he's doing with Fincher is gonna be like. It's like, okay, we'll see. But yeah.
Interesting.
All right, well, let's do a quick rundown. I'm going to go first this time. I'm going to say my favorite performance is 12 Monkeys of Brad Pitt's. Second is probably Fight Club, and um, I want to put Seven on there, but that's just kind of a, you know, it's good, yes, but like I think he's done better work. I can't really think of what I think is better right now, but I do like those three: 12 Monkeys, Fight Club, and Seven.
Okay.
Darren.
Oh, it's hard. Like this is the one that I didn't actually do a lot of research for, but I will say, yeah, 12 Monkeys is it has to be on there. I will also I love him in True Romance is obviously which we
Oh
covered is really
yeah,
fun
that's
watching
that's
him
what I
do
was
that.
thinking
Oh,
of.
he's hilarious in True Romance.
Yeah. Let's see. Spy Game, I really like him. I'm just going through a list of things. Mr. and Mrs. Again, he's Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford. I really like that one too. And Glorious Bastards, his Arrivederci is really funny. I think I'd put Inglorious Bastards as my number one just because it's so funny. Just watching him try to he's
Mm,
Texan trying and he's mangling that that accent or whatever. I think that's really funny. And then I really like Moneyball. I'm a big fan of Moneyball. Just the way
Hmm.
that it's a
hmm
the way that the movie builds, it's such a rich again, it's a cerebral type movie, and he's just playing Billy like he's just solid and he leads that and he's good with everybody and he's a good leader and you can see his struggle. I really like that one too. And then I'm gonna have to round out the my top three. I'm gonna have to put Ocean's 11 on there just because Ocean's 11 is
Oh God,
one
yeah.
of my movies that if it's on TV, I will stop and watch it. Like I can watch that one over and forgetting the sequels. I can watch that first one over and over and over again. And just his chemistry with George Clooney is like off the charts. He beats like most romantic pairings. You know what I mean? They're so fun
hmm
and they're finishing each other's sentences and it's so great. And Ocean's 13, they're wearing the same clothes and all the it's and they're sobbing at Oprah. It's so fun watching these movie stars coast on their movie starness. And so, yeah, I'm going to have to, not really a great performance, but again, sometimes you just want to watch an actor be a star. And I think
Yeah.
Ocean's 11 is my top
Yeah.
one.
No,
Right.
I agree with you. I agree with you on Ocean's 11. He is so good at Rusty. The second you see him in that scene with the
And
WB actors
yeah,
playing poker at the
yeah.
beginning, it's just absolutely hilarious. And his
His
scene with
frustration. Yeah.
his scene where he's instructing Linus later, and he goes, and absolutely do not forget, and he never finishes the sentence. It's great, but also his scene with Carl Reiner
Yeah.
is one scene with Carl Reiner is amazing.
Why don't you just take vitamins?
This, yeah, I mean, this is another one where it's like it's how do you boil it down to three? I mean, number one, I think for me is Moneyball. It
Okay.
is my favorite film of his. I love that, he was on the Daily Show once, and it was during the Oscar run up to the Oscars where he was nominated for it. And one of the things he said that really kind of made me revisit the movie is that it's so much that movie is so much about the worth of a human being, and Billy Bean, he's been in this game for his entire life, and he thinks he understands the worth of what baseball player is and what his job is. And you have Jonah Hill's character come in and basically just completely upend that. And it's just great to see them together. The scene where they pull off the trade with going back and forth is just absolutely fantastic. I love Moneyball. It is probably my favorite uh Brad Pitt performance.
And that's got a
Um
Steven Zalian and Aaron Sorkin screenplay. We talked about
yeah.
Malice earlier. You can tell when it switches from Aaron Sorkin to Scott Frank, right? Or is it Scott or who was it
It
Scott
was Scott
Frank that
Frank and Malice, yeah.
okay, and you can tell when they switch. In Moneyball, the transitions are a lot smoother. But then Steven
Yeah.
Zalian's another excellent screenwriter. Anyway.
Yeah. Two, I would probably say, I kind of like gave him a little bit of crap for his performance of like, well, it wasn't, first time I saw it, I wasn't quite ready to say, oh yeah, that was a great performance. I would have to say seven
Okay.
is next. His performance as Mills is fantastic. The scenes with he and Gwyneth, where they're in the apartment and Somerset's over for dinner, and it's like the scene where the subway they talk about the subway going by is just great. Like, you talked about the chemistry between he and Clooney in Ocean's 11, which is fantastic. I think in a way he's got comparable chemistry with Morgan Freeman in that movie.
Mhm.
I think the more you watch that, and then, I mean, you brought up Inglorious Bastards, which is fantastic. I'll probably go with my favorite movie he's done with Tarantino, which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, he's good.
I
Great.
think like I love his performance in that movie. It's just so fantastic. The scene, the chemistry between he and DiCaprio in that, and just the the surprise after they've gotten basically shit faced and stuff like that, and the Manson family is in their house, is in hit Dalton's house, and it's
Mhm.
like, huh, and they still take care of him in like no time.
Mhm.
It's just it that's definitely one of my favorite movies of his,
Yeah.
and I love his performance in it.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm a
that's
sorry,
one
Joe.
Johnny. No, that's one Johnny. That I know your interest has fallen off because again, it's like what interesting stuff are you challenging yourself with? But yeah, that is the ultimate hangout movie that just keeps toying with Tarantino's trademark violence. And when it finally breaks out at the end, it's one of the great FUs to history. You know what I mean? It's like, no,
Yeah.
the Mansons are not going to get away with this, not in my movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? It's great. So
I was surprised to hear you guys say Moneyball is your favorites. That's one of my least favorite. But
it might be one of those right time, right place things. I just remember
yeah,
sitting
yeah,
and my wife, Elizabeth, was bored by it, I think, in the theater, but I love the logistics of this and how they're talking to each other. And
yeah,
another great Philip Seymour Hoffman performance in there where he disappears into
Hmm.
yeah.
walls, does a lot of
Well,
stuff.
I'm not a Jonah Hill fan. He kind of ruined it for me. So,
That does it. That
and
could do
again, there's a scene where he's talking about numbers and stuff, and I just go, I don't believe anything you're saying, man." Like, anyway,
Yeah.
let's quickly go over Madeline Stowe. Kind of run out of time a little bit, so we got to go a little faster here. Madeline Stowe, I like her in this. Probably my favorite movie she's ever been in. I talked about her before. We talked about Last Mohicans, Darren.
And
She's
Stakeout.
always, yeah, she's always kind of breathy when she gives her lines, and I love that in this movie about her. But I recently saw. Unlawful Entry. It was on TV a little while ago, and I was like,
Mhm.
"There's that breathy Madeline Stowe delivery." So she doesn't she always what do you say? I don't know. She always Whatever that word is.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think about Ellen Stowe, Darren? You like her? Dislike her?
She's solid in everything she does. I feel bad because we have talked about it in Stakeout. We have talked about
Disappoints.
it in last movie.
Disappoints.
Disappoints that way. I just think that she's good and she's solid and she's independent and she's strong-willed in every movie she's in. She always gives a solid performance. I feel really bad for her in Revenge, where she's a pawn, for everybody and used as a sexual plaything, revenge plaything. But if she still has a dignity in that, I feel bad after talking about the women, how they're portrayed in The Line of Fire and in Last of the Mohicans, how the women are kind of taking a backseat to the men. And it's the same thing I feel bad saying about Madeleine Stowe's performance, that it's good. It's solid. There's nothing as revelatory as what Bruce Willis does and what Brad Pitt does. But again, she gives a very solid performance. I love that there's just something about Cole that she just jibes with because she's already interested in that stuff, right? In the timey-wimey kind of things. And I love the scene where, first of all, it's really funny. There's some really funny parts in here. I love the part where he's kidnapped her and she's on the bed, and I'm like, can she really be restrained with the bed sheets the way that she's tied? It doesn't look like tied very well. And then later, when the weird dude attacks him in a hotel, I thought the line was very funny. You just hear him in the background. I was attacked by a coked up whore and an effing crazy dentist. I thought that was really funny. And so she's part of that. I love, again, that there's a scene where she can escape, where Cole jumps out because he sees all the 12 monkeys kind of graffiti, and she has it where she reaches over, she closes the door, she can get away and she can drive away, and she doesn't because she's interested in this guy. She's already got an inkling. She's already met him before. She's already kind of empathizing with him, and so the next thing you see is she's right beside him, and she's being attacked by the homeless rapist, wherever that Cole kills. And I like I said, I love that she's the one that's trying to convince him that he's not crazy, that how crazy would that be? And this is going to lead into our time travel conversation, where she's already interested in people that are showing up in these weird times, right? You've got the John Cena character, who's Willis's partner, and he shows up like in the past in World War One, and she goes and she finds the photo of this guy, and she can see James in the photo with him. How crazy and scary would that be? That you're like, oh my gosh, this is all true. We're all gonna die, right? And so I think she plays that very, very well. And I don't really buy. I think it's more maybe the writing and the directing of it. I don't buy their romance because all of a sudden they're romantic with each other. I don't know if that needed to be in there. Maybe they could just escape and gradually they'll get there. But yeah, I feel bad saying she's just a solid performance. But yeah, she's a solid performance. She's not quite as showy as everybody else. Gilliam said on set she was a very calming presence for him, that he could go talk to her whenever he was frustrated and she would calm him down and help him think about stuff. So I think that's important.
Well, and she's the anchor, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
she's the tether to reality between
She's the
these
sane
two
person.
characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Like she is the one truly sane person outside between Goins, Cole, and Riley and Catherine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scene that we haven't even talked about the World War One scene yet, which I mean makes sense. We haven't talked about the time travel, but yeah, that one diversion, that one accidental stop, it's so funny that happens in a blip, and then we see that it ends up having some significance because of the fact that she makes a point of mentioning it in her lecture in 1996. Stowe, I think, has because she's got the least showy part, she kind of has the least hardest part in this movie. And I think she does a very good job. I mean, yeah, I do agree with you on the romance. I think part of that is I think part of that is the vertigo, the fact that they bring up vertigo, but it also goes to the inspiration of the original film that this is inspired by, which we will get to. But no, I think she's terrific, and I do want to mention before we get beyond the cast, David Morse as one of the scientist who is going to unleash the virus, and then Christopher Plummer's Goins' father. He is terrific.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Yeah. Well, the funny
Um,
thing about Christopher Plummer is you think it's Christopher Plummer. He's going to play a bigger part,
Yeah.
right? But I think that's a part of the movie's con is that he doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It does
Mhm.
because David Morse works for him, but it doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's that little the rug pulling, I think.
yeah. One of the scenes I want to bring up with Madeleine Stowe is when he first kidnaps her, when he comes back in '96 and puts her in the car and they're driving away and she's freaking out. That's a scene that I'm like, oh man, like she lets you feel the terror that she's going through. And
Mhm.
Yeah.
I really, really love watching her eyes in that scene and like just the way she's like reacting and trying to calm him down and trying to like think, how do I get out of this? What do I gotta do to, survive this? And I don't know. That's a great scene. That's a great performance in my mind. So I think she really wins me over during that scene. And I
Yeah.
love the way she says advertisement.
Advertisement.
I was waiting for James to go, you mean advertisement?
Something like that. Yeah, again, I feel bad saying I've said that already. I feel bad saying she's not the showcase part. But you're right, Brian. She's the tether holding everybody together. And that is a tough role to play. And she sells it. I don't have any
Yeah.
complaints. Like you said, Johnny, the breathiness of her performance suits this because she's in a situation where it kind of calls for that kind of language. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we talked about time traveling, so let's jump into time traveling. I love the time travel aspect in this movie. I think it's really fun. Maybe they could have like explained a little more how it's done, like how he's, everything. But other than that, I'm okay with it. I know, Darren, you want to talk a lot about it, so I'll let you go ahead and take it.
well, you look at what I love about time travel movies is none of them make sense. But I love, and for example, like we talked about in Back to the Future, if you're looking at Back to the Future 2, the whole thing falls apart once you think when Marty leaves 1985, he's technically not there for 2015, right? So how is he existing in 2015 if he leaves the 85 timeline? It doesn't make sense. It just he wouldn't be there to live it because he's not there. And so there's a lot of timey-wimey stuff. You look at Terminator 2, how they're trying to start like stop Judgment Day, and then it turns out you can or something like that. But you look at I really like what was the one? Oh my gosh, it's escaped me. The one with Jim Caviezel and Dennis Quaid.
Frequency?
Frequency, right? I love
Yeah.
the idea that even though time changes, you still remember how the past was. And so your brain is trying to. So his mom originally was alive and his dad was dead. And then it switches. So now his mom is dead and his dad's alive. And so he's got conflicting memories of both. But the future is the present has obviously been affected by the past. So a bunch of different time travel stuff. What I like it's really, really cerebral, the time travel stuff in here. Again, when I think what's happening is Cole is trying to figure out, and this is just what I got from the movie and the first time I watched it why it was depressing, is that he's trying to figure out a way that he can figure out how to stop the virus. And that's what the whole thing leads to. They're trying to stop the David Morse character, right, by shooting him. But the fact is, I love the idea that no, it's set. The future is set. You cannot
Hmm.
change that. When he imagines himself, and again, this is very famously taken from the Chris Marker film, like when he has that memory of watching this guy die in the airport, he's in a loop that cannot be changed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can't be altered. All that can be altered is he can figure out when the virus started, how it was started, so that somebody, and again, the Jones character comes in at the very end to say, I'm actually an insurance. And before, when I watched it, my dumb teen brain was like, oh, or my 20-year-old brain, or yeah, no, I was 18 when this came out, or 19. My teen brain was like, oh, that's depressing. Like, all she's there for is to figure out how to make sure that the virus keeps happening, right? She's insurance. But watching it this time, no, what's actually happening, and this is how it played out in my brain, is that she basically, Cole is gathering information so they can alter the future. They can't stop it, but
Yeah.
maybe they can figure out a way to find a cure for this virus. And that's what she's there for. And watching it
Hmm.
this time, I was like, ooh, that is so satisfying because yes, he dies and it's tragic. Time is it's a closed loop. But Cole, he makes that phone call, right? And so he actually is able to tell them this is how it started. And they're actually able to start something so that, yes, the scientist's whole plan is that they can return to Earth where it's not being ravaged by the disease, right? And now that they figured out a cure for that disease, an antidote. They can go and they can figure it out so that, yes, they can live in a future now where they can go above ground. And I thought that was very, very satisfying. But again, I love the idea that this movie, the time is just set. There's no changing it. Like he's got this memory of watching this guy die. That can't be altered. He can't have that memory taken away from him, right? So it has to play out like that. It has to play out like a tragedy. And I like how you're slowly getting that over the course of the movie. Even if you do get it earlier, I love the fact that it's like, oh, they did figure it out. The time travel stuff, like I said, is very cerebral and thought provoking. And in that Hamster Factor documentary, you watch the people in the preview screening not understand any of that. And I think the pushback with a lot of these movies, guys, is when they're cerebral, people are like, I didn't get it the first time. That means that's the movie's problem. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
I'm smart. Yeah. I know what I'm doing, right? The movie's dumb because it didn't explain it to me. And it's like, no, watch this a couple times. This is a movie that's made to watch multiple times and you pick up things as you go. But again, people don't have the patience for that anymore. They want to have things spelled out for them. Like in Castaway, when he's at the very end where the Chuck Nolan character is floating and he has that whale that's following him around. You watch people react to that. They don't realize that it's a whale that's trying to help him, right? So I'm kind of like, watch this going. So basically what you need, idiot viewer, is you need the whale to all of a sudden pop out of the water and go, hey, I'm a whale and I'm actually trying to help you get back to land. And then people go, oh, it's a whale that's helping him back to, you know what I mean? I think people are just so dumb that they're not willing to think through things. And I think this is one of those movies that proves that. It's like, yeah, you have to watch this a couple times, guys.
Well, and I think that speaks to media literacy in general. I mean, I think there's so much of a, you look at so many of the biggest hits out there now, so much of it is it's like because of the fact that it's basically spelled out for everybody, right? Like, I mean, this is, even though this movie was a success at the box office, it's still a hard sell. And you look at and you see now, I mean, granted, you can argue up and down whether the idea of test screenings is a good idea. It really is not. And it's well, I mean, even think about it. If Scorsese had listened to, if Scorsese hadn't listened to, if Tesson says Warner Brothers hated the scene with his mother, that was one of the things that test audiences loved about was the scene with his mother. Mm-hmm. And I mean, so it's like, it's
Goodfellas,
it's good,
right?
And bad. Like there are things where it's like there's a scene that's so memorable that you can't imagine the movie without it, but there's also things where it's like, yeah, if I could see this movie without this, I'd be fine. And it's like, I do understand, because the time travel, because I'd not seen the Marker film. I actually had not seen the Marker film until last week, actually.
When we told you we'd be covering it.
I know it's amazing.
That's why I watched it too.
It'd been on my list because of 12 Monkeys, because of how much I love 12 Monkeys. I just never gotten around to seeing it. And the thing that's kind of remarkable about the time travel, I mean, let's face it, like every movie is playing by its own set of rules when it comes to time travel. Let's put it this way. The most important thing, to a certain extent, is, do the filmmakers have a consistent idea of their time travel apparatus, or does it just fall apart? I mean, you brought Back to the Future Part 2. It's a fascinating example. But, I think in this one, the thing that is so remarkable is that the time travel in this one is kind of rooted in La Jetée. And because of the fact that if you watch that short, the basic bones of this movie are there in a 28-minute short made entirely of stills. the way Marker makes that film, we understand the visual language of what he's doing. And if you're familiar enough with 12 Monkeys, you see Gilliam representing that through the people's screenplay.
Yeah.
And even though I can't even remember if he had said that I think I remember him saying that he might not have even seen La Jetée, but it's like, it's weird because of the fact that there's so many visual references to La Jetée in 12 Monkeys that it's impossible to think they hadn't seen it,
Yeah.
especially given how much into experimental and
Yeah.
surrealist filmmaking Gilliam is.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's really funny that Rovin hadn't seen it, Gilliam hadn't seen it, the Peoples hadn't seen it until later, which I think helps it. You know what I mean? I think,
Yeah.
and again, about the time travel stuff, the thing we didn't mention, I think, is fascinating. I talked about how it's weird looking at all the skewed kind of vision of it, but when you talk about the plot out loud with your own words, it's like, oh, that makes total sense. I love the idea that they're trying to figure out where this virus came from, and Cole thinks, oh, it's because of this Jeffrey Goins guy, because I've seen photos
Yeah.
of him, but he inadvertently puts the idea in the Goins guy's head because it's
Mhm.
1990, except Goins takes it a different route. He takes it about the animals will take over it. So that's the level of his brain. That's as
Yeah.
far as that goes. But they're chasing that as a mystery. But then it turns out that the David Morse character, he's tied in with with Professor Goins, right? So
Yeah.
what happens is because of because of Catherine's her meeting James Cole, that puts in her head about the different timelines, right? She writes a book about how the different timelines, right, and how all this stuff is messed with, and then that inspires the Morse character to go to go on his rage, his kind of virus kind of tour, right? How he passes all this
Yeah.
stuff out. I love that. It's so fascinating when you say that out loud. Oh my gosh, they had the clues. They were just looking in the wrong place, right? I
Hmm.
love all that stuff. And so the movie, and I think Ebert said that the Vertigo scene is arbitrary, and I don't agree with that because I think it ties in. First of all, it's Gilliam making a statement. It obviously has the part where Cole loses he loses her in the movie theater, right? And then he goes out and she sees that she's changed her hair to blonde. It plays the Bernard Herrmann in the score in the background. I think
Yeah.
it's about how we perceive ourselves, right?
Hmm.
We're the same people. We're just trying to escape kind of the identity that we've got ourselves stuck in. And in a way, I like that they didn't touch on, or they hadn't seen La Jetée until later because that let them do their own things. La Jetée, watching it now, and I'd seen it before. I own the Criterion version that has, I think, Sans Soleil that also has it on
Yeah.
the disc because it's
Yeah.
short. But I'd seen it many, many years before. And I thought it was interesting using still photographs, 400 different still photographs. But the idea of La Jetée is about how our memories are basically snapshots, right? We just
Hmm.
remember certain images. But then movies are also images that are shot, that are shown to us 24 frames. A movie is literally one particular shot, a still frame, that's played in consecutive order so that we see 24 frames per second, so that it actually, there's movement, even though we're just seeing frames, right?
Mhm.
And it's the same thing in La Jetée. There's famously that one shot where all of a sudden you see the woman's eyes flutter open, but all that's doing is it's playing those images, those frames together as a normal film would, as he shot in a camera.
Yeah.
So it's all very meta. It all ties in. It's all about how our perceptions kind of play with things and how we can't escape our future, things like that. They go to visit this museum that has nothing but like stuffed animals, which again is a great statement on things that are just frozen in time, right? And so I think these are movies, yeah, that has the same twist ending, but I think these are movies that are two sides of the same coin. I think this 12 Monkeys just takes it to a deeper level, but it's basically about the same thing. It's basically still about perception, and I love that. So, Johnny, what were your thoughts on La Jetée?
Well, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting. I will say this real quick. I watched Zero Theorem the other day, and
Mm.
Christoph Waltz has a sleep mask that he wears in Zero Theorem, and it's the exact same sleep mask that they put on the guys in La Jetée. So I was like, ah,
Yeah,
that's a nice little tie in there.
right.
Um, well, anybody else have anything else they want to add, or anything that didn't get to say they want to say? Brian, you got anything you want to finish us off with?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to what Darren was talking about with
Okay.
Vertigo, and I do think yes, it was completely intentional, I think, because I mean, you think about what is Vertigo's about a man who's so caught up in his grief that he has to remake a woman in the image of the woman they lost. And in what's interesting in 12 Monkeys is that in a way, Madeleine Stowe's character is going through a similar transition for Cole, but it's not because Cole's insisting on it. It's because the more time she spends with Cole, she feels the need. She's basically meeting him in the middle, and it's sort of like the Judy character in Vertigo, where it's like she's going through this transformation where it's like every she's hoping that every step that she takes in this transformation, it's just gonna bring Scotty closer and closer. It ends up breaking them apart to where he loses the love of his life all over again.
Yeah.
And so I think I think the Vertigo illusions are absolutely intentional in this movie. I love the score in this movie. The use of the accordion as a primary musical instrument in this is absolutely wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does get to that sort of hallucinatory feel that the movie is going for.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Weird Al playing the accordion, just so you know.
That's
no.
Well, thanks, guys, for Brian, for joining us again. It's always nice to see your face, literally. We'll have you on again sometime soon. Hopefully, we can talk about Fear and Loathing if you. But we'll see.
I mean, you guys indulge me in Rad. I mean, we can consider it.
All right, that's on the
but
table.
No, it's always great to talk to you guys, and definitely need to have you guys back on Sonic Sim in the future. It was so great to talk to you guys about those 3 classic movies that we brought to the episode.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun.
That was.
So where can people find you, and what's next for you?
My main website is www.sonic-cinema.com. There you will find my reviews, my longer blogs. The episodes of the Sonic Cinema podcast are linked there. And you can also find some of my original music, as well as links to where my original music is. You can also check out the Sonic Cinema podcast basically wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, YouTube, just about anywhere. And next up, got a couple more episodes of the Fascism in Cinema for this year, and also going to have at least one more episode where we're going to be talking about a movie star that's kind of 21 years ago kind of had her big break, and as she's become one of the more reliable, consistently great actresses of the past 20 years, with a return guest. And then we're going to I'm still sorting out what 2026 is going to look like, but it's going to be an interesting set of discussions.
Well, please let us be part of 2026. We'd appreciate that.
Oh, definitely.
All right, that sounds great. Thanks again for joining us. And that's 12 Monkeys. Darin, any final thoughts from you?
No. Again, watch it a couple times, idiots.
Darin calling people dumb. I love it. All right, so for NostalgiaCast, I'm Jonny Craddock.
And I'm Darin Lundberg.
And a party? You went to a...
I am insane, and you are my insanity.
Brian, you got one for us?
Yeah. I it's funny, I texted Darin with it as I was rewatching it and talking about somewhat unintentional allusions to later films. Cole at one point says, "All I see are dead people."